الحمد لله الحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه ومن والاه. قال الله تبارك وتعالى في كتابه الكريم بعد أن أقول أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. يا أيها الناس اتقوا ربكم الذي خلقكم من نفس واحدة وخلق منها زوجها وبث منهما رجالا كثيرا ونساء واتقوا الله الذي تساءلون به والأرحام إن الله كان عليكم رقيبا. وقال رسوله الكريم يا معاذ اتق الله حيثما كنت واتبع السيئات الحسنات تمحها وخالق الناس بخلق حسن. Brothers and sisters, we've gathered today on the 18th of Sha'ban, meaning we have less than 2 weeks until Ramadan starts. First, before we begin, we should all continue to make dua that Allah allows us to reach Ramadan. A lot of us take for granted that we will automatically reach Ramadan just because it's so close. But there are people who went to sleep last night hoping to reach Ramadan that didn't wake up this morning. And there will be believers who will sleep this night who won't be able to reach Ramadan. So we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to allow us to reach Ramadan and allow us to witness it in its full glory. Alhamdulillah, Ramadan is a time given for us to push ourselves and to go beyond our usual limits. We know the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam in his regular practice was extremely dutiful with his worship. And we know that in his worship there was no faults throughout the year. He was so dutiful with his sunnah prayers that whenever he would miss one, the companions, the Sahaba, would note it down like this was in a regular event. That today the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam missed some sunnah. So they would note it down. Like this was something very out of the ordinary, very rare. For some of us, making the sunnahs are uncommon. For some of us, it's noteworthy when we pray our sunnahs. That because of the rush of this world and because of the rush we all have work, we have things to get to, it's hard for us to make our sunnahs. The Prophet ﷺ wasn't like that. He was different. His actions were the best of actions, and he was the most careful in everything he did, especially concerning ibadah. He would give so much in charity that he himself wouldn't have food some days. This was how his high level of action is throughout the year, outside of Ramadan. He would pray so much at night, not tarawih, but he would pray so much in tahajjud on a regular basis that Sahaba would note that his feet would swell up. Outside of Ramadan, on a regular day. Think of how many of us pray 20 rakat every Ramadan, every night, and our feet don't even begin to swell even a little bit. The Prophet Muhammad ﷺ would pray tahajjud so long every single night that his feet would swell up. However, it's narrated by our mother Aisha radhiyallahu anha. Our mother Aisha, of course, being the wife of the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, knows best about his house and how he lived at home. Who knows better about the eating habits of the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ than the person who ate with him? Who knows better about the sleeping habits and the tahajjud of the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ than the person who slept next to him? Of course, our mother Aisha knows best. So when she tells us that during Ramadan, even though the Prophet Muhammad was already perfect in his practice, he would take it up a notch and he would excel more, it's something we should try to implement in our lives. She narrates that during Ramadan, even though the Prophet ﷺ was already hardworking in his worship, he would go even more and go even above and beyond in Ramadan. And even in Ramadan, the last 10 days, he would put a special emphasis on those. And during the last 10 days, he would go above and beyond, even for the standards of Ramadan. Now, we know, all of us, we strive to be like the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, but we all fall short. However, this shouldn't stop us from trying to achieve his standard and trying to reach his goals. He left his sunnah for us to follow, and even if it seems like it's some unsurmountable mountain and a giant hill, we should try our best to face it, and we should try our best to act upon it, because that's why he left for us. And when we strive for good in and outside of Ramadan, Allah helps us. In a hadith Qudsi, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says himself through the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he says, if my slave takes one step towards me, I go a meter towards him. And if he takes a meter towards me, I go multiple meters towards him. And if he comes to me and he's walking and he's taking his own pace, I come to him running. Now, obviously, this hadith isn't meant to be taken literally, obviously, but it's meant to show that when we take effort and when we strive and when we work hard for the sake of Allah and with the sole intention in pleasing Allah, Allah makes it easy for us. That, it's hard for us to wake up for tahajjud. It's hard for us to wake up for fajr. It's hard for us to give up things we love like food and water. However, when we start to do these things, Allah makes it easy for us. We find like fasting throughout the year is very difficult. If any one of us were to just start fasting Mondays and Tuesdays or Mondays and Thursdays, we would all find the weight of it. We'd find the heat of the day. We'd be thirsty for water. We'd be hungry for food. Alhamdulillah, during Ramadan, we don't find these things because Allah makes it easy for us. And the more we strive for the sake of Allah, the more He makes things easy for us. Now, we know we should, take some effort and strive for Ramadan. But that effort we put in starts before Ramadan. We know the Sahaba would take 6 months in advance before Ramadan when they start prepping. Before Ramadan, they would start prepping 6 months in advance. So now that we're only 2 weeks away, and we don't have that 6 months, we don't have that luxury of time, what can we do starting from today that'll help us reach the most out of this Ramadan? Our goal every Ramadan should be to get to this Ramadan for it to be our best one. Every Ramadan for us should be the best Ramadan. It should be a new goal. It should be we push ourselves to a new level every Ramadan. But like any test, you have to prepare for it. Back when we were in school, if we had a big exam coming up, like a LSATs or something, you'd be a fool if you just walked in the first day and took the exam. Everyone knows you have to study. You take your time. You study as much as you can. You take every moment of your life and you study for any big exam. We should view Ramadan the same way, that we don't just walk into Ramadan day one and expect it to be amazing without preparing ahead of time. If the best generation and the best of people would prepare for their Ramadans, we should follow their example. Now, before we start Ramadan, what are some things we can do to maximize it? First, if we have any bad habits, we should try to take those out of our lives. Bad habits can come in forms of like addiction, but then also sins we just fall in. Like personally, I'm someone who drinks a lot of coffee and I drink a lot of caffeine. Now, if I walked into Ramadan and I didn't drink caffeine that day, I didn't drink any coffee, what do you think would happen? I'd be tired, I'd be lazy, I'd have a headache, and that first day of Ramadan would be ruined. Now, we only have 30 days of Ramadan. Would you let one go to waste? Would you let that first day of Ramadan go to waste because you couldn't give up coffee now? We should start from today breaking down these bad habits. Some of us don't have bad habits that we don't even realize. Like we speak bad about one another. That's a bad habit. And we catch ourselves doing it unconsciously, not on purpose. Before Ramadan starts, you have to break these habits. You don't want to walk into Ramadan and you're talking bad about other people because you haven't broken the habit yet. You don't want to waste your deeds like that. Rather, you start from today and you start breaking down these habits. Another thing is we waste a lot of time, usually. For those of us who are on social media will grab most of our time. Starting from now, we should start looking to delete our apps. We should start looking to delete social media off our phones and spend more time in the actual present reality. Spend more time with the worship of Allah. The time we use on our social medias and our phones, if we were to lock them up and delete them, we would have so much more time for ibadah. And there are ways to do this. All phones have the feature where you have a parental lock. If you ask one of your friends to put it on, if you have no self-control, you can ask your friend, hey, you know what? I'm trying to use my phone less this Ramadan. Lock my Instagram, lock my WhatsApp, lock my Facebook. Some of us, even YouTube is like, it become a big issue for us. That YouTube has good lectures and has good things, but also has a lot of nonsense. We should try to maximize every single moment we can this Ramadan. Every moment we can, we should take out of it. And that starts from today. In the hadith I read earlier, Ya Mu'adh, ittaqillah haythu ma kunt, wa adbi' as-sayyi'at al-hasanatu tamhuha, wa khaliqun nas bi khuluqin hasan. 3 parts of this hadith is advice the Prophet ﷺ gave to Mu'adh bin Jabal. Now, before we go into the advice, we have to know, okay, who is Mu'adh bin Jabal? He's not just another companion of the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ. Rather, he was like a mentee to him. Now, we know, like, whenever someone comes up to us for advice, if that person came and just said, give me advice, and I didn't know him, what would you say? Something very general, something very basic. The famous hadith, a man comes to the Prophet ﷺ and says, give me some advice. The Prophet ﷺ says, La taghdab, do not get angry. Very, very general advice, because this man he didn't have that level of relationship with the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ. But Mu'adh bin Jabal was someone who was very important to the Prophet Muhammad. So we know his advice is going to be important as well. The Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, we see him mentoring Mu'adh through the hadith. In one hadith, Mu'adh bin Jabal would lead Isha prayers at one masjid, but he led them too long. And the people would complain, they complained to the Prophet Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. In that hadith, he says, Ya Mu'adh, afattanun ya Mu'adh? He says, Oh Mu'adh, are you here to spread fitna? And the next hadith, he'll say, there's another hadith, Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam is in a public gathering, and he says, Mu'adh, wallahi inni uhibbuk. He says, Mu'adh, by Allah, I love you. So we see he has a true mentor status where he's, in one hadith, he's rebuking him because he did something wrong. In another hadith, he's praising him because he's a good character. So we know the Prophet ﷺ really much viewed him as a mentee. So we know when he gives him some advice, it's something we should take into account as well, because we look to have that same relationship with the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, where we learn from him and he's a mentor to us. Says, Ya Mu'adh, ittaqillah haythuma kunt. Step one, be conscious of Allah wherever you are. Now, being conscious of Allah has like two sides. The first side we know is being conscious of the order of Allah and the command of Allah, right? We know to abstain from those things that are haram. We don't eat pork. We don't drink alcohol. We know these things. And we ordain which is good. We eat halal. We do good things. That's the one side of it. The other side is having taqwa in our day-to-day lives. Now, starting from now and even during Ramadan, we'll try to be in the masjid as much as possible. And we try to be in the masjid for the 5 daily prayers and everything we can. However, most of us have jobs, we have work, we have school, we have things, we have responsibilities. We can't spend all day in the masjid. What's the solution here? Obviously, when you go to the masjid, you shouldn't just cut yourself off from practicing. You shouldn't cut yourself off from the war of Ramadan. First, when we study and when we work, our intention should be that we're doing this for the sake of Allah. We shouldn't work with the intention, you know what, I need to make money, or I need to make my boss money, or I enjoy working. Those can be secondary motivations, but the first motivation is always, I'm doing this for the sake of Allah because Allah commanded me to fend for my family. Allah commanded me that I have a family, I need to feed them. And even for school, we're only studying, we shouldn't be studying just because we enjoy the subjects and that, oh, I have a fun time at college. We should be studying with the intention that I'm going to one day earn for my family and I'm going to support them like the Quran and Prophet Muhammad ﷺ taught me to. So that's the first layer of being conscious of Allah, is that what we're doing, everything we do for the sake of Allah. Driving to work in the morning, coming home from work, everything we do, we should have that intention. You know what? I'm not doing this just to do it. I do it solely and only for the sake of Allah. But the second level is putting ibadah in everything we do. For instance, if we're at work and we're between shifts, instead of maybe scrolling on our phone or texting our friends or calling somebody or taking a break, take that time and instead read some Quran. Do some adhkar, make some dua. We have so much free time. We don't believe we have a lot of time throughout our day. If you ask most people, they'll say they're very busy. But then when you break it down, you'll have 5 minutes here, 10 minutes there, 20 minutes there, and all of a sudden you have an hour in your day just of wasting time. Why? Because between at a red light, you'll pull out WhatsApp instead of reading Quran. Between shifts, instead of doing some adhkar, you'll call your friends. During Ramadan and leading up to Ramadan, you want to maximize your time. Every second of Ramadan is sacred. Every moment of Ramadan is something that we can take benefit from. And we would be fools if we let this time slip by and we're just using our phones, or we're just, talking to our friends, or we're scrolling through Facebook or WhatsApp. We should take advantage of every single moment we can. And if we through our day find ourselves getting tired of certain ibadahs, we shouldn't look down upon that. It's a very natural feeling. Let's say I know I'm reading Quran all day and all of a sudden I don't feel the urge to read Quran anymore. That's not something to look down upon. Rather, it's time for you to pick up a new flavor of your ibadah. Let's say, I've read Quran all day, I'm getting a little tired of reading Quran, do some adhkar instead. Don't start talking to people, don't start chatting to people, do some adhkar. You've done some adhkar, and do some dua. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave us so many means for us to worship Him. We should commit sins. It's an unfortunate reality of our state. We are weak, we will commit sin. But when we do, we need to have a specific game plan. Okay, what will I do when I fall into sin? It shouldn't be I fall into sin, I just shake my head and walk away. We should have a game plan. Okay, when I commit this sin, what will I do? You see, first thing you do is you should have regret. And the problem is some of us have these sins that we love to do. You be honest with yourselves, there's some sin that people love more than other sins, that we love it within ourselves. If you're in a sin like that, the first thing you do is you ask Allah to remove you from that sin and ask Allah to remove the love of that sin from you. But then at the very least, you should hate that you love that sin. You should hate that you're committing that sin. That should be the first step. Hating the sin and wanting to come to Allah. The next step is, like the hadith says, follow up that sin with something good. And this should be a constant cycle, not only in Ramadan, but throughout our lives. We should constantly, whenever we fall into some sin, always follow it up with something good. Don't just settle on istighfar. Of course, that's important. The first thing you do is you seek forgiveness from Allah. You have regret. But the next thing you do is you do a good deed to erase that sin. That's what the Prophet is promising us, that if we commit a sin and we do a good deed, it'll erase it. And it'll be as if to Allah we never committed that sin. And some ulama, they say when you commit a sin, try to do a good deed in the same body part used to commit the sin. Let's say if a brother has a problem with speaking foully, he uses foul language, or he speaks ill of other people. Speak good and read Quran instead. That should be the good deed you use to replace that sin. If someone has an issue with looking at inappropriate subjects, instead read some Quran, look at something beneficial. And same thing for ears. If someone has an issue, they listen to haram music or they listen to haram things, they can instead listen to something beneficial like Quran or a good Islamic podcast or anything like that. And the last advice he gives is وَخَالِقُ النَّاسِ بِخُلُقٍ حَسَنٍ, and deal with people in the best of character. Now during Ramadan, we see this the least in people. That people are tired because they stood all night, and then they're hungry because they fasted all day and they're thirsty, so they lose their tempers very quickly. What is the point of standing up all night in prayer and then fasting all day if you're going to lose your good deeds yelling at your children? I know so many kids who come up to me and they say, Brother Junaid, you know what? We hate Ramadan. Why? Because during this time we can't talk to Baba. Because if we talk to Baba, he'll yell at us. There are children who come up to me with this issue that they don't want to celebrate Ramadan. They don't want to fast because they see the effect it has on their parents. That, they become short-tempered, they become ill-willed, and they snap very quickly. During this time, during fasting, our most important thing is our character. We represent Islam wherever we go, to whoever we are. To our children, we are Islam. And if they see us and they see us struggle and they see us, quick to get angry, quick to get mad, always sharp with our comments, they're going to think, okay, this is what Islam teaches us to do. Rather, when we're fasting, we should find ourselves to have better character and be kinder to people and be better to people. We are all tired and we are all hungry during Ramadan. This is no excuse for anyone to hurt another person. During Ramadan, we should see ourselves, our character should increase. Along with our ibadah, as we pray more, we fast more, we give more charity, we should see our character increase. We should see ourselves becoming better people. And a side note here, something very important, Ramadan is also a time for us to emphasize community and for us to emphasize our families. In community, if anyone has any issue with another brother, they should drop this issue before entering Ramadan. You should never enter Ramadan with ill will towards another Muslim. If it means that you're the first person to go say salam, if it means that you're the first person to say sorry, if it means that you're the first person to shake the hand, then be the first person, because that's the better of the two. But you should never enter Ramadan with ill will towards any other human being. Ramadan is a time for you to spend with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and the worship of Allah. Why would you allow another person to occupy a part of your heart with malice and anger? And with that is our family. We should be the best to our families. The Prophet Muhammad ﷺ famously said, the best of you is the best of you to your families. During Ramadan, our character with our family should increase and we should spend more time with them. Ramadan should be a time where our families celebrate coming together. Beyond just iftars and beyond just suhurs, we should come together and worship. A lot of times, we spend our Ramadans, the brothers will spend the Ramadans in the masjid and the sisters will spend the Ramadan in the kitchen. Because we lock them away. And we know what? They spend their day cooking for iftar and they spend the nights cleaning. It's a terrible practice. We should spend our time helping them as well. The Prophet Muhammad ﷺ would also help with the chores at home. Generations, he used to sweep at home. He used to stitch his own clothes. During Ramadan, why do we stop ourselves from doing this? Our mothers have just as much right to Ramadan as we do. And even if it's something small, we should be helping them out. In the morning, setting the trays, setting the plates, helping them just cook a little bit here and there, setting the table, putting the dirty clothes in the dishwasher. I'm not asking for a total role reversal here, but I'm just asking that we help our mothers out. They deserve to do our ibadah from Ramadan like we do. They deserve to stand in the night praying and crying to Allah as much as we do. And they should not spend these nights just doing dishes and cooking for us. Rather, they have the time for Ramadan as well. Now, just to summarize the 3 points from the hadith. First, before I mention that, we should enter Ramadan with a clean heart. Forgive those who have wronged us in any way. Second, we should start from today. Start building good habits today and stopping bad habits today. If it comes to just taking coffee out of our lives, let's try to go without coffee. If we have an issue with speaking bad, be conscious and try your best not to speak bad about people. Whatever you do, try to stop these bad habits from affecting your Ramadan. Next is to look at the hadith. Ittaqillah haythuma kunt. Wherever we are, be conscious of Allah. And build that into your daily schedule. On the way to work, instead of listening to the radio, listen to some Quran or listen to a beneficial lecture. Between shifts, during your lunch break, there's so much free time. We can, instead of lazing around and relaxing, we can push ourselves and do more ibadah. Follow up sins with good deeds to erase them. Now, unfortunately, the reality of all of us is that we are sinners. Alhamdulillah, Allah will forgive us for our sins. So the first thing we do is we seek repentance. But then we follow up this sin with something good, something to replace it, and take its spot and erase that sin completely. And dealing with people, those in our communities, those in our families, deal with them with the best character. أقول قولي هذا واستغفر الله لي ولكم فاستغفروه هو الغفور الرحيم. إن الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستهديه ونستغفره ونؤمن به ونتوكل عليه ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا من يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلله فلا هادي له وأشهد أن سيدنا محمدا عبده ورسوله. قال الله تبارك وتعالى في كتابه الكريم بعد أن أقول أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم إن الله وملائكته يصلون على النبي يا أيها الذين آمنوا صلوا عليه وسلموا تسليما. اللهم صل وسلم وبارك على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم تسليما كثيرا. اللهم اهدنا فيمن هديت وعافنا فيمن عافيت وتولنا فيمن توليت وبارك لنا فيما أعطيت وقنا شر ما قضيت إنك تقضي ولا يقضى عليك إنه لا يضل من هديت ولا يضل من واليت سبحانك ربنا وتعالى. صل اللهم على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم تسليما كثيرا. يا معشر المسلمين أقيموا الصلاة.